I was really excited to do this interview, guys. I have the author, Julie, coming in. She was breaking down what does it mean to become a pro. We hear about the pro mentality, about championship mentality, but she breaks down so many different things that go into becoming a pro. And it just happens to be the title of a book that she just released not too long ago. So I have the author of Becoming a Pro, and we talked about discipline, not just from the action of doing things you say you want to do from a motivational standpoint, but also how do you correct and keep accountable young players that we have around. So that's a challenge that we have. She broke down of how we can reframe these things. Self-talk. How do we talk to ourselves as athletes? How do we overcome the problems that we have? How do you overcome being inconsistent, the confidence issues, discipline issues? She covered so much, and it was so much fun talking to her. So hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for tuning in. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys to author Julie, the creator of Ball is Sight and author of Becoming a Pro. Appreciate you. Yo, what is going on, man? I am BeBall Jones. I am simply a basketball trainer that is here to bring you the blueprint, the stories, and the mindset to help you make progress in your game. Appreciate you tuning in. Let's get it. Ball is psych. What does that mean to you?
Man, I had so many coaches say that it's all mental, and I believe them. So I'm like, basketball is psychology. And my coaches never taught us how to apply that. The game is all mental. So ball is psych is the way that we can apply the mental side of the game.
Yeah, it's crazy because I was just thinking about that like yesterday and today about how coaches always say the mental game is so important. The mental game is everything. But then they stop right there of explaining the mental game and what it actually means. They say you got to be mentally tough, you got to be disciplined and all this stuff, but that's the end of the explanation of the mental game.
Right.
So what does that next step look like in your eyes of like, yeah, it's the mental game, but like what's after that?
Well, I think it starts with putting it on the calendar. Because what would happen with my coaches is they would say it's all mental, and we get 20 hours a week of practice, not 5 minutes dedicated to the mental side of the game. So I think when coaches are able to say, all right, we're going to spend 1 hour a week at least working on it, then I think that just creates the space for at least a conversation to happen with the players, and that's a great place to start.
So I know some coaches hear mental toughness and mental work, and in their brain, it's like, oh, we're going to condition the players and make them mentally tough. We're going to run them until I get tired, and the cliche things like that. But that's not the full script of what mental performance, mental training is. So if the coach says, okay, I need to have an hour of training mental, what does that look like in your opinion?
I think a lot of it has to do with self-awareness, because every player is so different. Everyone struggles with different things. And so when you do those sessions, it should lead to each player learning something about themselves, learning something that they struggle with, whether it's personality assessments or reflecting on what you want your impact to be as a player. It should be about creating more self-awareness, and that way each player can figure out exactly what their struggle is. Because if they don't understand what their problem or weakness is, how can they fix it?
Yeah, I was talking to a coach and he was kind of pointing out players and things they need to work on, and he would just say, "Oh, we need to get her better mentally. Oh, she need to work on this mentally." I'm like, you kept saying mentally for every girl, but what I see is different mental work for each girl. Like she needs to be more consistent, and she just needs to be more confident, and she's just not disciplined on the court. So, how can you work on the individuals also with the team overall? Like, how do you figure out how to be specific mentally with the individual player, but still have the team move forward and be progressing together?
So I think the coach's job is to ask the right questions. And so what I did when I was working at Clemson is I would ask the whole team a question. One of those was something like, all right, pretend you're at the end of your career and a teammate is giving a speech about what it was like having you as a teammate, what that experience was like, how you acted, how you treated them, what you practiced like. And they all wrote a little bit about what they would want their teammate to say about them. And then they all went around and all of them had very different answers. So it allowed each of them to hear, okay, this is what my teammate's trying to do. She wants to be known as someone who's reliable and consistent. And yeah, everyone just had a different answer, but we all moved forward collectively by deciding what we want our impact to be as a teammate.
So when it comes to a team culture and a team or a coach wanting this team to be known as this, like we're going to be the hardest working team, how do you move the team forward in that direction along with the individual pieces that you have? So you might have somebody who is a hard worker initially, and then their teammate next to them, they work hard here and there, kind of when they feel like it. And then the teammate next to them, I mean, I'm a natural talent, so I don't have to work hard. So how do you get all those girls, all those guys in the same group to move toward in that right direction?
Yeah. Well, we all have blind spots, right? So some of us may think that we're hard workers and we're not at all. And some of us may think that we don't work very hard when we're working harder than other people. So it's like we have negative blind spots, but we also have positive blind spots, right? Because when we're good at something, we kind of just assume everyone is good at it too, unless someone's like, hey, you're really good at that. So if I get a team together and they decide, all right, our competitive advantage is going to be we're the hardest working team in America, I think that every player should think about, okay, what is this teammate good at? What do they need to improve upon? And we all go around and we say, hey, I need this from you. This is what you're good at. And this is where I need you to step it up. Because I think that provides encouragement as far as here's what you're good at and we need you to bring it every day. But also it gives you a place to improve and it'll look different for everyone because everyone's strengths are different. Everyone's areas that they can improve on are different. And that's the fun part about basketball, right? We all bring something unique to the table and we find a way to come together collectively and be great.
I think that's important because a lot of times we overemphasize, I won't say overemphasize, but like highlight one specific piece or one specific style of mental toughness. Like Kobe is pretty much the metric for all coaches to point to of what hard work is, what discipline is. And I love Kobe. I'm a Kobe guy, so I'm not knocking it. But Kobe should not be the standard for every player. Like you can strive to take things from him, but I think Kobe is the outlier when it comes to most of these things because he built things up when he was 8 and he got to the pro level, 10 years later. So it's not a surprise to see him do a lot of things he did. But if we're trying to start at 16, learning what Kobe did, it's like, oh, he started training at 4 a.m. in the morning. So I need to train at 4 a.m. in the morning. He trains 6 times a day. So I need to train 6 times a day without the context of what it is. So how can we nitpick in detail, like this is my superpower and my strength, and these are things I can learn from this standard or these players above me that are pros, essentially?
Yeah, I love that question because I'm also a huge Kobe person, and that style doesn't work for everyone. You think about guys like Jokic, like would him and Kobe get along? Probably not. But it works for Jokic. Like his mentality is I'm going to show up and I'm going to do the work and we can win, we can lose, whatever. I'm bringing the same mentality, the same focus and work ethic to practice the next day, regardless of the result. So I think it's just about finding what works for you. And I mean, there's no one way to do it. We can't all be Kobe Bryant's. But it's just about finding what works for you because a lot of players, if they had to start their day at 4 a.m., they would burn out by day 2. So that just, everyone's different and you have to be the expert on yourself to find what works for you.
So you don't think Kobe could have worked with Joker?
They probably could, but it is funny to compare the two as far as their mentalities. They seem very different. What do you think?
I think the fact that he worked with Shaq was like, okay, if I can deal with Shaq being lazy and being this dominant, he could play off of Joker. And I think Joker has the like when I'm clocked in, you're gonna get the Kobe mentality type of work ethic. Once I clock out, don't expect me to do more than I have to. So if I'm supposed to be in the gym from 8 to 10, when it hits 10:05, I'm walking out and I'm going to go back home and do what I have to do. But when he's clocked in, he's working, he does what he does. But I'm not an NBA player 24/7 like you, Kobe. So that's why I think Joker is similar to Shaq, but he still has that next level of work ethic than Shaq did.
Right. I think the respect piece would be there from both of them, but it was Kobe's life and it's Jokic's job.
Do you think Jokic is a good, I won't say good, like a better metric to look at when we're talking about work ethic? Because he has the mentality of, this is what I do. But at the same time, while I'm here, I'm going to give 100% of what I have. Rather than Kobe, of like ball is life and live, die by the game, and all that stuff. So I think would Joker be a better metric of like, hey, when he's here, he's giving 100%, and when he's off, he's off.
I think it's definitely a more modern and maybe practical model to look at, given all that athletes have on their plates these days, right? Because you have NIL, like each player is running a business of themselves and they have to be in charge of that. So if basketball's their life and then they have classes and NIL deals and they're trying to build a brand and market themselves, it's kind of a lot. So if each player can have that, all right, when I get to practice, I'm giving it all I got, and then it's not going to be my life. But while I'm here, I'm going to give it everything I have. I think that style just is really practical these days.
Yeah, I like that because you get some players that want to adopt the ball is life mentality, but they're tired all the time and they get injured all the time. Like you said, you just wear down and break down. But then it's like, hey, I can only train for, like, if you told a kid you can only train for 2 hours a day, I'm like, oh, I can do other stuff outside of basketball. And it makes more sense for them. But you have to get their brain to figure out, like, hey, you have 24 hours in a day. 2 hours can be spent doing basketball, or maybe four if you just want to, 2 workouts a day or whatever. So for them to reframe it as like, I'm here to clock in and do what I have to do so I can, get better and go after these goals and progress in basketball, but still do other things outside of the court because you need that balance. So how can you figure out what that balance is? I know it's different for every player, but how can a player look at this and say, I need to figure out my level of work ethic and this is what working hard is for me?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with what it is that you enjoy. Like, I loved playing pickup basketball. That didn't feel like I was going to a draining practice. So I could go play pickup for hours and still have the energy and the focus needed to practice. But I think that's what summer's for. It's figuring out what works for you. Like, if you are practicing for 3 hours in August and you are sick of being in the gym, like, November is not going to be fun for you. So that's why I think it's good to experiment, figure out what doesn't drain you in the summer. That way, you get that kind of locked in before the season gets here.
How does that change for you, in your opinion, at each level? So if you got youth, middle school, high school, and then of course you have college players, and there's different levels of college, so you can take that how you want to, and then the pro level. So how can you, or how would you kind of break it down at each level that you see?
It's so hard with AAU because kids are playing so many games when I think at that age the focus should be on skill work. And then I think once you get to college, there's the overuse injuries that we see all the time. So I think college level needs to be really about listening to your body. If your body can take you going after it for 4 hours a day in the summer, like that's amazing. I wish I had that body, but I don't. It's pretty injury prone. But yeah, I just think you need to listen to your body and find what works for you in that aspect as you move up to higher levels.
So what was your mental performance life like as a player? Like where were you at mentally? Like were you the hardworking, disciplined one, or you kind of just I'm here when I can and consent? Like what was your mental game like when you were hooping?
So I would definitely say I was the hardest worker. Um, and then I would just overthink it, and I lacked a lot of confidence, which is probably why I worked so hard. Kind of trying to overcompensate for that. But I really tried to be good at all the things that I could control, which was how hard I worked, how good of a teammate I was, being a great leader. That's really where I focused my energy. Yeah, so that was kind of my mentality, but the lack of confidence is really what caused me to start Ballis Psych. It was like, I really need this, and this isn't available. How do I learn this? And then I was like, oh, okay, I think I should share.
Did you have that mentality in the moment of like you were aware you weren't as confident, or did you have somebody like a coach or somebody tell you like, hey, you're working hard and you're good, but your confidence just isn't? How did you get the awareness of the lack of confidence that you had?
Man, I just always knew I wasn't confident. But yeah, when I got to college, my coaches, they would tell me the truth. Because I was kind of inconsistent with how well I performed, right? I would set the school record for threes, and then I would spend the next 3 games like missing every shot just in my head. And they're like, girl, you gotta work out your confidence. And I'm like, I know. But yeah, I was lucky. I had some really good coaches in college.
Do you think inconsistent like the do you think confidence or lack thereof is what breeds most inconsistency?
Mm. I think where my inconsistency came from was attaching my value and my worth to my performance. So I put all this pressure of like, if I don't perform well, if I'm not playing, I don't matter. And that also affected my confidence. So it was kind of like a cycle of that inconsistency.
Because I think that's the thing for a lot of players. Like that was the same thing for me, where
Mm-hmm.
my confidence was shot and I just wouldn't perform how I could have. Great game, but then some reason I just couldn't carry that over to the next game or the next whatever was going next.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could perform well when my confidence was high and I just, like you said, I wasn't in my head, I wasn't overthinking.
Mm-hmm.
Then somewhere along the line between game one and game two, something messed that up to where my confidence would drop. It means my performance would drop. It means I start getting in my head more. And then, like you said, that reoccurring cycle of thoughts in the gameplay, then thoughts more in the gameplay. So, and I'm watching players now, it's the same thing to where they're not consistent. Well, why aren't you consistent? Well, you're not as aggressive because your confidence isn't there. So I think that's part of why people are so inconsistent, or younger players mainly is more consistent because they don't have the confidence there. So how did you start to kind of reframe or rework from being inconsistent, from the lack of confidence and overthinking to actually outdoing it then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it came from the narrative that was in my head. I played junior college basketball, so it's like when I would miss a shot, I'd be like, okay, I'm a shooter and I'm not going to get recruited. And then I'm just going to end up with an associate's. And then I can only play college basketball for 2 years and no one's going to recruit me. And I had to shift that into, okay, what can I control even when my shot's off? Because they're recruiting that just as much as they're recruiting my shot. So it shifted to, how do I respond when I miss, right? Do I hang my head and ignore my teammates, or do I focus on playing hard defense right after? So I had to shift it into, shooting is not the only thing that matters, right? Because a shot takes half a second. And if you play 40 minutes and you shoot 6 shots, you're really going to base your whole confidence off of 3 seconds. That makes no sense. So that shift really helped my confidence.
Did any of that impact your workouts and your training to go into it?
Yeah, definitely. I think I just put so much focus on shooting that I would get all the overuse injuries. And my coach would be like, sit down, okay, chill out. You focus on knowing the plays and being a great leader, a great teammate, and the rest of that will come. Because I would have a bad game and then I'd be like, all right, the only way to fix this is to go shoot for 4 hours. And it's like, no, you have Achilles tendonitis. So learned a lot of those lessons the hard way.
I think, honestly, some of my confidence issues also came from the inconsistent work ethic. So I have, Monday I'm on a 10, I'm working out hard. But then I'm kind of sore, maybe I'll rest today. And then Tuesday I'm off. And then Wednesday I'll pick it back up. But I don't go how I should go. I'll go like a 6. I kind of go through the motions to say I'd work out. And then Thursday I pick it back up, go to a 10. And then Friday I got to try to go to a 10. Then I'm off for the weekend. And it was like, you can't do that, B. Like, you have to be more consistent. And I see the same thing with players too that I'm working out with. Like, yeah, man, I had a great day Monday. Okay, what you do Tuesday? It's cool. I went to the lake with my family and, whatever. And then Wednesday, I kind of shot around a little bit. And Thursday, I did my ball handling a little bit. Okay, how long did you do it? Maybe 5. The agreement was 10 minutes for ball handling. And so you have the inconsistent and the fluctuating work ethic going into it. And so if you're not putting in A-level effort, then of course you're not going to get A-level output of scoring. Like, if you're not trained like Kobe, you can't expect to perform like Kobe. To that player, how do we get them mentally to lock in and say, hey, you're sorry because your training's sorry. Like, let's be honest. But if you picked it up and were more consistent, this is the output you can actually have. So how can we get them mentally to lock in and realize, like, hey, you have to train better and be more consistent with it?
Yeah, I think it starts with understanding that motivation comes and goes, right? It's not at all reliable. What's reliable is discipline, because there's going to be days where you do not feel like touching a basketball. But when you do, the motivation comes afterwards. So that's what the studies have shown in sports psych. It's like, okay, what actually makes us feel motivated? It's doing the work. But so many players wait to feel like it. And a lot of times that doesn't come. And so they're inconsistent. But if you can say, hey, I'm doing this at this time every single day, then the motivation is going to show up after.
Hey, hold on. Time out real quick. We're going to get back to the episode. I know you're enjoying it. I know you're enjoying the show. But I need you to help me real quick, and to make sure this episode can grow, make sure this podcast and show can grow overall, and you can keep getting great guests like this. Make sure that you subscribe and follow along. So if you watch right now on YouTube, help me out by hitting the subscribe button. Go ahead and do it real quick. If you're listening in your car, chill out for a second. If you're on Apple or on Spotify, just like when you get a moment, hit the follow button, but not right now while you're driving. If you're working out or something, Are you still in your room? Then go ahead and subscribe with me. Like, help me help you. Okay. But thank you for watching. I really appreciate you. I'm gonna stop interrupting. Let's get back to the episode. Thank you. So for the player that was more like you, and they had the high work ethic, but they were overdoing it. So hey, you need to kind of keep working hard, but let's kind of adjust how hard you're working and not overthink so much. So how do we get the player who's working their butt off and they are training hard, but then on the other side of it, they're not seeing the fruits of it because they're either hurt or they're just not training necessarily the right way to get the output to come. So how do we get the player who is working hard to understand the mental adjustment so they can perform better?
Mm-hmm. I think less is more. And that's a really hard lesson to learn because you want to feel like you're being productive. At least I did. And that's why I kept working, because it was like if I was taking a rest, then I wasn't going to achieve everything I wanted to achieve. There's this great story about two lumberjacks, and every day they go out in the woods together. They start chopping wood at the same time, and they stop chopping wood at the same time. And every day one of the lumberjacks disappears for an hour, and every day the lumberjack who disappears ends up chopping down more trees than the other lumberjack. And this went on for a while. And finally that lumberjack who was chopping all day was like, where do you go for that hour? Like, how are you chopping more wood than me? I'm going nonstop. And he says, I go sharpen my axe. And I think that's the way that as players, we need to look at rest, right? It's not the breaks, it's the fuel for the work. So taking a break can actually get you where you need to go faster by keeping your axe sharp.
I learned that lesson, I won't say the hard way, but a more funny way, because I was training and working out, and I just go and I just go. And for me, at that point in my life, naps were like the laziest thing possible for you to do. And so my friend at the time, she was like, yo, you need to like relax some. I'm like, relax for what? Like, I can go. I'm good. You know, I'm waking up early and training, doing this and doing that, but I'm functioning. So I'm thinking I'm fine. She's like, look, just take a nap. I'm like, man, whatever. So this went on for a couple weeks, maybe a month or so. And at one point, like, I knew I was tired, but I just wouldn't let my body rest because remember, laziness is connected to a nap. So one day I was like, all right, finally going to take this nap. When I woke up from that nap, I feel like a brand new man. I'm like, what is this thing? Like, y'all been hiding this from me for all this time? So after that one nap just, I don't think it's like a super long nap. I think it's maybe like 30 minutes of a nap. I woke up feeling so refreshed. So naps are amazing. That's my takeaway from that.
Life-changing nap right there. That's amazing.
Yes. So that's my sports psychology piece of the day. Take naps because
take naps. Rest is wise. Yes.
So it's crazy how that mentality can, I want to say it's almost toxic, but it's not the healthiest mindset. You know, I try to stay away from calling things toxic because that's kind of a overused word at this point. But right. The ball is life. Like, you have to grind, doesn't stop. All that stuff, I think, gets to a point where it's like, all right, buddy, like, what's the full picture? Like, ball is life, but finish that sentence. Like, work, you know, play hard, all these things, but what's the rest of it? Mm-hmm. So if you, okay, I ask you like this. If you had to finish that sentence, like, ball is life, but what would that be for you?
I would say, but you make bad decisions when ball is life. So it can't be your life. You can love it, you can work hard at it, but when it's your life, you're going to work yourself into the ground. And that's going to lead to a whole bunch of problems that you'll have to work through later.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing about that is, too, when we see people comment on professional athletes' pages and like, well, LeBron, why are you out here making a podcast and why are you out here doing shows? And Why is Steph Curry spending time with his family? Right? Why aren't you in the gym? They have a whole life. Like they have families. They have all these things going on. And you can't expect them to be in the gym 24/7, lifting weights, watching film, back on the court, and just repeat that until they die. Like that's not attainable by any means. So how can I don't even know if we can get people to understand that because that's kind of stupid. I don't get why they do think that, but
Right.
but it's just I don't know. Like, what do you think that came from? Like, with the whole mindset of like, yeah, you have all this time because you're a professional, so you should be trained all the time. I really don't understand that and where that came from. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of our culture with the ball is life thing. It's like you should be working 24/7 when in reality it's like, okay, happy athletes are going to work harder. So if you get that fulfillment from starting a podcast or cooking, then go do that. So that way you can be your best self when you get on the court. But yeah, the whole idea that you have to be in the gym constantly, I think it's almost like a self-worth issue. It's like, okay, I know if I'm in the gym 24/7, I'm a hard worker and I'm better than this person. It's like, just get your work done while you're there. Like, make it efficient. You don't have to sleep there.
Yeah, I think we overglorify stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it gets kind of murky. But when you said it was more of a self-worth thing, I was thinking from the fans' point of view of like you see them taking breaks and having time off. Like if I were you, I would be in the gym all the time. So like somebody like a Shaq who couldn't shoot. Like, oh, why are you, doing all these endorsement deals? You should be working on your free throws. But if you were in his position and you were actually more confident, you would just be doing what you do. Because like we talked about earlier, what makes Shaq great is not his free throws. I understand that's a weakness, but he's still so great at these other things that even though it's a weakness, he still overcomes that versus a DeAndre Jordan. Like it's hurting you more to not have free throws versus a Shaq. So I think their insecurity is more of a projection against what the pros have. And like they don't work all day at their jobs. Like you clock in, you do your 9 to 5, you do your 8 hours, 40 hours a week, and you go home. And that's the similar mindset I think a lot of pros have too, like we said with Joker.
Yeah, that's so true. It's just projecting their own insecurities when Shaq was like, I got strengths that I already worked on. And that's what separates you.
You remember, I don't know if it was last 2 seasons or just last season with the LSU women when they had a lot of things going on when Angel Reese started having more brand deals and stuff. And then Flage came out doing more music and everything. They were like, oh, they're not focused. They're not doing what they're supposed to do because they're doing things outside of LSU basketball. What was your thoughts behind
that? Didn't they just win a championship? Like, I mean, it's like, well, it's kind of working for them. So like, Flage, stay in the studio. Like, you do what works for you and what works for your team. But I think it's just the individualistic era that we're in where everyone's under a magnifying glass. Every athlete can easily become a celebrity, and that just attracts all of this completely unnecessary hate while they're winning. Which, okay, I get it if they're like 0-20, yeah, you should probably not be in the studio all the time, but I mean, they're killing it, so you got to just keep doing whatever works for you.
Yeah, and I love Angel so much from the sports psychology perspective because she understood like, hey, I can wear the villain hat and I can wear it well. So if you guys want to do that with me, hey, I'll wear my crown and I'll be Queen Petty as best as I can be.
Right.
And for the fact that she took on all of that hate and negativity and she performed, night in, night out. And she understood her role. She didn't try to take away from Flage. She didn't try to take away from the team. She was like, hey, this is my role. This is who I am. I'm going to perform at this role. But at the same time, I'm a superstar off the court as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to mix the two up and not going to be superstar this game because I got to drop 20 and 10 to shut everybody up. So I think the way that she took that perspective, used it as the right fuel, and performed was amazing. And I don't hear enough people celebrate her for that because she took on a lot and she's still taking on a lot.
Yes. It reminds me a lot of Reggie Miller. He wrote a book called I Love Being the Enemy. And he just totally embraced all of the hate that he got. And he had a chip on his shoulder because of it. And it totally helped him. And look at Angel, you know, everyone was like, reality's coming when you get into the league. And she's still killing it. Like, she'll go to the Met Gala and then go drop a double-double. It's amazing, yeah. And people don't talk about how significant that is.
Yeah, and then she had that moment of vulnerability when she was crying at the podium.
Mm-hmm.
And then people took the opportunity to attack her more. But I respected that because the fact that you opened up and shared the behind the scenes, that's not an easy thing to do, especially when you embrace being the villain. You took that on. But remember, she's still a girl. Like, she's in her 20s. And like, she's in her teens and 20s at that point.
Mm-hmm.
What are you expecting so much of her to be? And what more could she have done, honestly? So for her to open up at that point and share, like, yo, I took on a lot of hits that most girls aren't dealing with. And probably my team still don't fully understand and know. So my hat goes off to her. Like, I don't know if I could have did what she did.
She is a trailblazer in so many ways. And it's sad that we're not appreciating it right now, right? Because when the documentary comes out in 10 years, we're going to be like, what she was doing was amazing. But it is cool to witness the way that she takes all the hate that she's getting and she can be vulnerable. She's just killing it in every way on and off the court.
Yeah. I feel like right now she would have to be maybe, like, of current players right now, specifically basketball, like maybe top 10 when it comes to the sports performance piece of like current players and, you know, especially at the pro level. Like, let's do this. Give me like your Mount Rushmore of sports performance athletes. Like, when you, not just discipline, not just confidence, but when you think about sports performance in totality, these players just stick out to you the most.
Okay. Wait, can you go first? I'm going to need a minute.
Sheesh. You put me on the spot. Okay. All right. Just doing current players. Okay. One would have to be, not ranking them, but just like my number one thought. LeBron. The fact that he's been doing this for so long and still doing it at a high level, able to keep the main thing, I respect. That's crazy. Steph would have to probably be number two because all the ups and downs he's had at Golden State are ridiculous. So he still maintained and performed in spite of all of it. Caitlin Clark, the weight that she has on her shoulders, oh my goodness, like, that's ridiculous. So she's on my list. Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards.
Oh,
he's probably number 4 because that's my guy. I love Ant. Like, of my next generation young players, he's one of my 3 guys that I just love on the court, off the court. So off the top of my head, those are probably my Mount Rushmore of sports performance players.
That's a solid list. I'm going to go Asia Wilson to start. Just amazing. Should have been unanimous MVP last season. Yeah, and just the way that she's leading the charge for back-to-back championships and making it look easy. It's incredible. I gotta go Steph too. Maybe Jokic. Maybe that's just because I've been studying his detached but focused mentality. Is that 2? Okay.
That's 3.
3.
Yeah, Asia, Steph, and
4th and
Joker.
final. I think I gotta go LeBron. Like, you're playing with your son. Like, how long can you keep sustaining this excellence? It's amazing. But we got a lot of legends in the making right now.
Yeah, that's a good list. Asia was kind of surprised, but I have to put her. She might be my honorable mention.
Yeah.
Joker's just a really good one too, because like we said, that attachment, be able to be so great and so dominant, but still have like, I'm shutting this off, guys. So like 9 to 5, I'm here. I'm gonna give you what I have. 501, do not call me, do not text me. I am not the NBA player. I am the Serbian 7-foot guy who just does other stuff.
Right.
So, I love Asia though, because the way she respects the game and also represents it as the 2-time back-to-back champion, the way she is able to balance being feminine but still being a dominant athlete too, and not being able to conform one way or the other. Like, oh, she has to be more masculine and do this and that. Like, no. I'm a young lady. And she has to be more feminine and be no. I'm still a hooper. Like I get down that way too. So for her to be able to find her balance of what that is, it might be 60-40, it might be 50-50. I don't know what it is for her. But for her, she found that comfortable spot and she's performing night in, night out. She's taking accountability when she has to. She's amazing, man. I love Asia. Like, she's dope. So that's a good pick.
I think she's also driving the incredible chemistry that we see the aces have. And she just makes all of her teammates better. And even the way that they've all embraced their rookie, I think that's a reflection of her leadership.
Do you think she is still underrated though by fans and by the league?
Definitely. I mean, well, first of all, she wasn't unanimous MVP, and I'm not going to get over that ever. But yeah, she's very underappreciated. Finally getting a shoe, but that took too long.
I think both of those are just blasphemous. Like the fact it took this long to get a shoe, and the fact that she wasn't hands down MVP. The fact that she was it fourth, was she third or fourth in the polls?
I don't even remember.
It's irrelevant. The fact she wasn't one was the whole issue. So, and I'm a fan of pettiness, and she does it the right way. She has like the beautiful touch of pettiness with everything she does. So I'm a big fan of that alone. So
pettiness,
I love
and
pettiness.
class. She's got the perfect mix. But at least South Carolina is appreciating her and gave her a statue. So
oh yeah, that's no surprise what they're doing. Like I can't say anything wrong about Dunn. Like forget that. She's amazing.
Yeah, they're killing it there, and it's killing it with class.
I can't wait to see that documentary on Dawn, specifically what she's doing right now in South Carolina. That's going to be amazing to watch. They need to come out with one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, so last year when we played them, they came out a little early before the game and they shook hands with every member that was on our Clemson staff. And I just thought that was cool because no other staff that we played against did that. And that's why they're the national champs, because I mean, the way that they do everything, it's just the highest standard of excellence.
Yeah, I forgot what game I went to, but I noticed that too, where They went out and shook hands. Usually it's like the head coaches, they'll come over and shake hands, or after
Right.
the game they kind of go through lines and everything. But before the game, that's the level of professionalism. Like
Mm-hmm.
Dawn set that as a standard. We're going to be professionals before, during, and after. That's a 24/7 mentality for her. We're going to be
Yeah.
professionals. We're going to handle things the right way. She, we could do a whole episode on Dawn.
Right.
So
Yeah.
she's amazing.
She really is.
Oh man. So we've talked a lot about the mindset of professionals between Asia, Angel, Caitlin, Joker, Kobe, and you have something tied to that about becoming a pro. You have a book that you recently released. So what is that about? Like, what does that mean for you to be becoming a pro?
Yeah. So I actually wrote the book because I needed to read it. I had decided, all right, I don't want to get back on a coaching staff. I want to focus on becoming a full-time author, but I was still treating writing like it was my side hustle, like it was just a hobby. And I was like, I need to be a pro. I need to figure out how to become a professional. So I turned on The Last Dance and I did some research. And I just think there's so many players who have these big dreams. What do they say? Like $1 million dreams with a minimum wage work ethic. And they just don't know what it takes to become a pro. So I wanted to put all that information into a book that's fun to read.
I think it's interesting. You said you wrote a book that you wanted to read.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you wrote? Like, did you write from the perspective of what you needed to hear and see?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm just fluent in the language of basketball. So that's always been my way of communicating life lessons. But really, every book that I write is because at one point it was something that I needed to read. So, for example, Daily Wisdom is my 365 days of motivation. And it's like, you know how hard it is to stay motivated every day of the year. And so while I was playing, I would look up motivational videos or motivational quotes, and I put that all into a book that I wish I had when I was playing.
Okay. I want to talk about that book, but I'm trying to help you promote the new book.
Oh,
so
that's right. Good thinking.
My brain's kind of like, I want to go there, but don't go there. Like, so maybe we'll do that later time. All right. Becoming a pro. What does it mean to have become a pro? Like, what does that look like? What does that kind of mean? So the book means becoming a pro, but by the end of the book or by the end of the reading, I have become a pro. What does that mean for you?
I think it means you show up every day, regardless of how you feel, and you get the job done. Because we can all make excuses. We can all say, I didn't feel like doing this today, so that's why I didn't get the result. And for me personally, it was like, I can't write today. I have writer's block, and stuff like that. And it's like, no excuses. For example, Kobe, there's a text thread that Jewel Lloyd had posted with him. And she was like, how do you get out of a shooting funk? And he said, there's no such thing as funks. There's just the next shot. And it's kind of the same as writer's block, right? It's don't project negative past poor performance onto the future, right? Just write the next sentence, take the next shot. So it's a refusal to make those excuses and just a forward thinking mentality of like, you're only as committed as your next step. So take that to the best of your ability.
I like that. So, okay. I think a lot of times we label things or we label ourselves as things, and that kind of determines who we are and what we do. So like you said, we label this pocket, like we label 2 games in a row of bad shooting equals a shooting slump.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that, because I know a lot of times we get into the positive self-talk and positive thinking stuff. So would it be as simple as just like saying I'm a great shooter? Like, how do you flip that switch to turn it over to say, hey, how do you go from 2 bad games of shooting to say, oh, I'm a great shooter, to turn around to game number 3 being your regular game?
Yeah, that's a really good point because we act out of identity. So saying I'm a bad shooter is very different than saying I had a bad shooting game. Because we become whoever we tell ourselves that we are. So I think it's very important that the I am statements are what's true and what's good, even if you don't feel like you're there yet. You say you're a great shooter until you become one, and you don't identify with those bad games as your identity. You just take it as that was a bad shot, not I am a bad shooter.
But how do you find that? How do you find a balance in that? Because somebody will kind of affirm and self-talk, I'm a millionaire, I'm a billionaire, but you have $5 in your account and you struggling to go to McDonald's. So how do you find that sweet spot between reality of where I am and the affirmative speaking or the positive thinking that you're trying to do? I'm a great shooter, but I'm shooting 2% from the 3-point line. My form is messed up. So how do you bridge that gap between reality of who you are and where you actually are to where your affirmation is not this basically being a lie? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah. I am a big believer that you can't just look at yourself in the mirror and shout positive affirmations. Like, you actually have to go out and chalk up some wins, right? So I think if you're saying I'm a millionaire, it should lead to behavior change. There was this study done, and they took all these students who were earning C's and D's, and they just gave them A's for 3 months. And they also took all the students who were earning A's, and they gave them D's and C's for 3 months. And then they became that. So the D and C students became A students because their teachers literally lied to them and said, yep, you get an A on that. So I think it's important that the beliefs also change the behavior in order for them to be effective. So if you say, I'm a great shooter, then it should also come with, well, great shooters spend an extra hour before practice putting up shots. And that's where you really see it translate from an affirmation to a habit to reality.
Because I hit a period where I was like, I don't like affirmations. Don't tell me anything about affirmative speaking and stuff,
Right.
because I hear too many people who they got the entire routine down. They have affirmations and sticky notes on the mirrors, on the walls, in their car, the screensaver on they have like the most detailed affirmative speaking life possible.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing's changed from the beginning of that affirmation to the end. I'm not trying to be like judgmental with it, but you start to see like, okay, maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Maybe this isn't the tool to use to work to get to this end goal of what I'm going after. So I get a point where I'm like, affirmative speaking is terrible. Why would I want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just like you said, it was the actions behind it that caused that gap between reality to the goal is.
Mm-hmm.
So basically it's just making sure that actions align up behind what the end goal is what you're saying.
Yeah, there has to be behavior change. And I think it's a lot easier to act yourself into a new identity than to affirm yourself into a new identity.
Mm. You helped me out because I was so against affirmations for the longest, and I just
Oh,
hit a period where I'm like, this is stupid.
yeah.
Like,
I'm
I'm not
not
doing
taping
this.
any post-its to my mirror. I can't do
I mean, I like the whole concept of, so my spiritual background is, Christian.
it. Hmm.
So like, write the vision, make it plain. You have to set the vision before you have to write things down. And I find it dandy. I understand all this stuff, so I'm not trying to knock it. But it gets to a point where I've wrote this thing down 5 years later, it's still not there.
Hmm.
There's a gap there that somebody's missing. And so to see that gap always be there, and sometimes it's getting wider, like you're losing money rather than gaining money. Yeah, I'm a millionaire, but your account keeps going backwards every time we talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. The behavior change is where the focus should be.
I think the affirmation should be, I am doing this thing, or I will do this thing, rather than this lofty goal of, I'm a great shooter. So rather than saying like, I'm a great shooter, I am the type of person who will get up 100 shots before practice, or I'm the type of person that will, take 10 minutes to shoot before I leave in the morning, when I wake up in the morning, something like that, to where
Hmm.
you will start to, oh, I didn't get my shots this morning, or I didn't go do my ball handle, I didn't meditate like I needed to, I didn't whatever. So I think that might be a better idea of what we can do for our affirmations every morning.
That's a great point. Like, you don't say, I'm a marathoner, because that's like incredibly overwhelming. You say, I'm a runner, and then it's like, oh, I'm a runner, I should go out and run. And before you know it, you stack up enough days and you're able to run a marathon. But it starts with the habit, like you said.
Hmm. When I read the book Atomic Habits, that's basically what they are breaking down of how, like, it's like the blueprint of how you can change your actions,
Yeah.
because it lays out how you can simply add a habit. A lot of people want to say, you know how it is, every New Year resolution, losing weight, gaining weight, doing this, doing that, stopping this, and nothing changes. So if you simplify the habit by making it more attainable and making the action steps easier to do, so like, find a gym that's on your way to work or on your way home or something like that. Like, small things like that we can add to make it more of a habitual thing, rather than, oh, I got to drive 30 minutes to the other side of town to go to the gym. Well, of course you're not going to work out now, because that's an excuse. So
Yeah.
Atomic Habit was great.
Yes. Highly recommend it.
But we have to stop promoting that book and promote Becoming a Pro, because
Right.
I don't have that author right there in front of me. So, all right. Okay. Another time out. Okay. Look, if you got to this point, you have to be enjoying the episode. Like, you have to. At this point in the episode, you're enjoying it. So help me help you. Just, if you're on Apple right now and you're on your phone, okay, just take your phone, press the subscribe button. It's right there. Just do that with me. Even if on your laptop, take your mouse, boom, click over, boom, do your thing. Now you subscribe. Now you linked in, because you don't want to miss the next great episode that I have. But doing stuff like this helps the episode grow, makes the show grow, and the podcast grow, so I can keep getting great guests and keep doing great interviews. So if you listen on Apple or Spotify, take a second, look at your phone, press the follow button, okay? And share with a friend or two, because you'll find the value in this. You want to have this conversation with your friends so they can have the same value. Now the whole basketball community can grow. All right. Thanks for listening so far. I'm gonna get out your way. Let's get back to the episode. Appreciate you. But I do want to do this, because I thought this would be cool to do. I'm actually a fan of yours, so this would be cool to do. So I went through your Twitter, and I saw a couple of posts that I'm just like, man, it'll be cool to talk with her about it, like right now on the podcast. So, first one, the best teams have a character first, result second approach. The scoreboard isn't how they judge success. The goal is to be hardworking and have great effort, focus, discipline, accountability, leadership, and toughness. If you put character first, the results will come.
Yeah, so I think everybody who's ever played basketball wants to win every game that they suit up for. And so the difference is not wanting to win. It's about your character. And if you're able to execute those kind of habits, because so much of our culture promotes winning is everything. And it's like, you can't just focus on the result because it's about how you get there. So I think that's a lot of my message throughout my books. It's character first, result second.
Yeah, I was literally thinking about this last week about how they say winning is everything. And I thought about how that's not true, because if you have to cheat to win, you can't sustain that, because at some point you're going to get caught. And that wasn't a real win anyway. But if you have great character, it's easier to take that loss or take whatever comes with it, because the input into it was what you had. So if you come with it with proper character, then at some point it's like, I don't say you have to win, but you set yourself up for success better.
Yeah.
So
a few years ago, I was in AAU coaching a 7th grade team, and we were playing up in a 10th grade league, just getting destroyed every game. So winning couldn't be everything. So I was like, look, guys, we can't control that other teams are taller and more talented and athletic and stronger, but we can control how hard it's going to be for them to beat us. So let's go give them hell. And, the season started out rough because they would get up early and we would get down on ourselves because we're looking at the scoreboard like, we're down 30 in the first half. What's the point? And then towards the end of the season, the girls had some fight in them. People might have been beating us, but we were giving them a hard time. And we just got so much better. So that way, next year, when they were in 8th grade, 10th grade league was nothing. So it had to be about getting better. And that was a really important lesson for me to learn as a coach.
That's funny, because I had a similar experience. I don't think we played up to 10th grade, but we still stayed in our class, but we just weren't the caliber. Like,
right.
These girls are like EYBL, like they're those type of girls.
Yeah.
And most of the girls I had it was 6th or 7th grade I had that year. And most of them are just kind of starting out to play. They don't have the training and experience. And so we went into that tournament, and I was like, I don't know how it's going to go, guys. But in my mind, I wasn't saying tell them that, but
right.
Like, this is going to be pretty rough. One game, I don't remember what the end score was, but at one point in the game, it was like 72-10.
Man.
It was ugly. But we played, and somehow we ended up playing them twice. I think we lost to them in pool play. We got to them again in the bracket. And the next time we played them, it was 40-something. It's like 20-something, I think.
Wow.
And then at some point, the coach, I don't remember how it came back to me, but I don't know if one of the coach told the parents or somehow it came back to me. Like, the coach was saying, we don't know what happened, but somehow those girls are playing just as hard as they were the first game. And nobody's ever played us that tough the entire tournament, let alone getting blew out by 60 plus points. Like, they haven't struggled like that. And I was like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything, but hey, shout out to the girls. Cause the whole, like you said, we can't control the talent we're going to play against, but we can control our effort. We can control how well we play. So they never gave up at any point. And it showed by the same team that just drummed you by 60 plus points. You came back. You still lost, but the margin went down by a lot. So that game identified their character right there. Like, oh, you girls are tough mentally. You're going to keep fighting, keep performing. To where the same opponent that you just went up against again, they had a lot tougher time going against. So shout out to them. That was fun to watch. So I understand your pain.
Yeah. But as their character developed, the results got better. So that's the character first, result second mentality.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you were a better coach than I was. So they probably should have had you. All right. For the next one. Great teams have no tolerance for anything that gets in the way of winning. If someone isn't living up to team standards, they get held accountable. You can discipline someone without demeaning them. It's one of the nicest things you can do for them.
Yeah. I think a lot of that came from Michael Jordan. Gino Auriemma wrote in his book about going to watch a Bulls practice, and he was most impressed by MJ and Scottie Pippen and the way that they were first in line for every drill and they went hard every single time. And if their teammates didn't, then they were all over them. And I think that's a hard lesson for players to accept, because a lot of times we think feedback and accountability is an attack. And so we automatically get defensive. But if you really think about it, if someone is holding you accountable, they're saying, I know you can be better. And that is actually a huge compliment. And that's why I say accountability is kind, right? If someone's holding you accountable, it should be like, thank you, right? Instead of like, don't talk to me like that. Yeah.
I think I have an issue with this as a trainer, to where I have no issue holding you accountable, but I'm against like the physical punishment stuff. So, oh, you didn't do this, so it's 10 pushes. You didn't do this, so we're running. So how can you still, how can I'll keep it personal, how can I get better with holding them accountable with, we live in a results-based life where you have an input, this is your output. You reap what you sow. You did this, so this is the repercussions of it. So how can we hold players accountable without the physical punishment? Oh, you have to run a push-up, so that level of discipline.
I think a lot of it is praising the actions that you want repeated, right? A lot of people don't think that that's accountability, but when you praise a player in public in front of all their teammates, then everyone else is like, wait, I want that. And then it's also the way that you communicate with them, right? I always try to ask players questions, because when you ask them a question, it insinuates to them that their opinion matters. Maybe they were onto something, like, hey, the play is supposed to go this way. Why did you go this way? And maybe they'll have an answer, but maybe they'll be like, I don't know what I was thinking. And they'll come to their own realization, which is a lot more powerful.
But do you think that we can still, okay, so we had the conversation with them, and let's say, hey, you need to make sure that you're meditating every day, or I ask you to perform this task or whatever, and you didn't do it. So how do we then say, hold on, like, we have to hold you accountable now. There has to be discipline here. So how do we have that conversation?
I love the statement, you're better than that. I try to say that as much as possible, even like I'll be babysitting and I'm like, kid, you're better than that. Like that's not you. And I think it's just a much more positive way to get them to think about themselves. Because if they can think like, oh, yeah, I am, or, you know, even if you discipline them after that, they're still going through their head thinking, I'm better than that. That's why I'm being disciplined.
I was reading this book before, and it was saying how, I forgot who it was, but it was some business manager, CEO, something like that. And he would notice how certain employees would do certain things. So instead of the average mindset of like reprimanding them and doing whatever, like you said, he would find the good thing to say about them. So you've done 9 things wrong out of 10. I'm going to find that one thing you showed up on time today, man. Like, look at you, man. Like, I'm proud of you. You said you're going to start showing up on time. You did it. Thank you, man. I appreciate you doing that. And then from then on, boom. Or kind of like how you said, where the accountability piece comes in of like, you haven't showed up on time, but today you did it. Oh, thank you, man. You showed up on time finally. Like, they would find the silver lining, and that became kind of how we talked about earlier, changing the label of them. So They were identified as a late employee or basketball player that showed up late. But the one time you do, we're going to celebrate it. Like after practice, we're going to throw a party. Everybody's going to get ice cream and pizza because, Jamie showed up to practice on time today. So like, oh man, like I'm not a late player. I'm not a late employee. But that reframing of their identity, like you said earlier, changed the actions, that changed the accountability.
Right. Yeah, because people just want their hard work and their effort to be appreciated. So you could say, like, look, you went really hard on this play and like you were going so fast that you were going the wrong direction, because it acknowledges that they were doing something right and they could be doing even better if they were doing it a different way.
I like this. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this.
Definitely. Could go all day.
All right. Don't say that because we actually will. All right, next one. The only thing more effective than discipline is love. Discipline may change your behavior for a little while, but fall in love and you'll accomplish more than you ever thought was possible. When you love something, you sacrifice and commit. Focus on falling in love with the game.
Yeah, that is definitely a lesson that I learned from Kobe, because you can just, it's so obvious that he loved the game. So he didn't wake up every morning white knuckling like, oh, I have to go to the gym at 4. It was like, I love this game. I love the satisfaction I get every time I go through a hard workout. And I mean, it's so true that when you love something, you will cross oceans for it. And that's a lot easier than having to just get through the days. So I think love is a lot more effective than discipline.
There was a period where I was like kind of going down this rabbit hole of motivation, and I was reading something and it was saying how they put a rat into one of the mazes and they put cheese at the end of the at the maze where it can go to it, and they tracked it and saw how it did, but then they set it up again and they had a cat chasing it, and it performed even better. So they were saying how, yes, a mouse loves cheese, of course, because that's what their food is. It's how they satisfy their cravings and needs. But the fear of the cat can also drive it too. I think a lot of times we force the negative side of motivation and discipline. Like you have to just carry so much hate in your heart sometimes. But then you look at somebody like Steph Curry and it's like, he grew up with a pretty nice life. His dad was in the NBA, same thing for Clay. Like, not everybody has to come from the struggle like a LeBron James did, to where everybody doesn't have to use their pain as motivation. And as someone who's the instructor, we don't have to use discipline as the motivation. You can be in love with the game and love the process like Kobe or like Steph does. Like, Steph plays with so much joy, you can't help but be a fan of that guy.
Right.
Like, he just can tell he's out there having fun. So I think we can do a better job of making love be a motivating factor rather than discipline. Oh, you messed up, so you got to run. Like, no. Enjoy the process like Kobe did, or just love what you do every single day like Steph. So that's why I love that tweet. I think that's a good point that we can do better with.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, it just comes down to being driven by your dreams and what you love and what you want to achieve, instead of the fear or the threat of what will happen if you don't. The focus has to be positive.
Yeah, I think too that sometimes we burn out on that energy too. So you want to be driven by fear so much to where now you live a life of anxiety and you just get anxious all the time because it's the fear-stricken emotion that you have all the time. Not to say you can't use it, like use what you have, especially if you just beginning with or you need something to get by. But to live a life of discipline or punishment being the motivating factor, the driving factor, it's not sustainable long term. So that's where, like you said, the love has to come in to change it.
Yeah, I think shame is a terrible motivator. It just feeds into a cycle of fear and self-loathing, and it might feel motivational, but ultimately it does more harm than good.
So you wouldn't use shame at all?
I did during my career. No, I think love has to be the driver, because shame says, like we were talking about earlier, it's our identity. So I used to have a bad game, and I used to be like, I'm a terrible shooter, I'm a terrible basketball player. And it fed into a cycle of, okay, well, now I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to work harder. And it just drove me into the ground. And I should have been focusing on my dreams and the love for the game instead of I suck.
How would you define shame? Let's go there.
I mean, when Brene Brown talks about shame, it's the difference between shame and guilt is I did something bad, and shame is I am bad. So I think shame is an attack on your identity.
Okay. Because I was thinking in, of course, basketball terms of how a coach would kind of call out a player kind of more along the lines of accountability. Like, hey, you made this turnover and it cost us this. And that can come off sometimes as shame or versus guilt. But I think when you internalize it, like you were saying, now I'm the turnover prone point guard, it's more of shame versus guilt. Is, oh man, I cost us the game and it lost us the championship or the playoff spot, whatever it was. And that's an incident or a moment that happened. So that would be guilt. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. The difference of, I'm turnover prone to I committed a turnover and it cost the team the game. Because I am turnover prone is going to translate into the next game because you have that as your identity now.
Pretty smart, man. I like talking to you.
Oh,
this is nice. You know, man, I'm trying to be like you one day, so yeah, it's all good. All right, the next one. Your brain is like a computer and your self-talk is the programmer. Positive self-talk boosts confidence and keeps you going. Negative self-talk stresses you out and causes you to live in fear. Words have power, especially words you say to you. Choose wisely. The strongest mind wins.
Yes. I mean, you think about coaching, and sometimes it seems like your players aren't listening to you, and they listen to their friends a good amount of time, but there's one person that you listen to more than anyone else, and that's yourself. And that's why I think self-talk is so powerful, because the things that we say to ourselves, we actually believe. And if you really understood the power of self-talk, you would be so against any negative self-talk.
Yeah, that was my struggle. Man, that's still my struggle because I'm my harshest critic in my entire life. And before you even get a chance to say anything to me, I've already went 10 rounds with myself and just, man, it's terrible. And so I suck at that, man. I've been mindful of it and I'm working on being better, but that self-talk is something else. I'm working on fixing from the fixed mindset to more growth mindset when I talk to myself, but it's been a struggle.
It's a fine line because you want to hold yourself to a higher standard, and it sounds like you have high expectations for yourself, which is good. And it's hard to give yourself grace and the self-compassion when you want to be like, no, you need to do better, you suck.
it's funny too because I'll show other people that grace, and it's all good. I'm patient when it comes like your personal development. You got it, very patient to work with you on it. It comes to me, you should have better.
Yeah.
Like you get zero chances for mistakes, and it's like, bro, you should have had that 10 minutes ago the first time you did it, and it's ridiculously high standards.
Right.
And then sometimes I hold other people to certain standards too, and it causes friction sometimes because I have the expectations for myself, and sometimes I hold you to the same expectation. So if I'm able to do certain things, I expect you to be able to do certain things. How do you find that balance between being able to hold yourself accountable to these things and these are your expectations, but then separating them over here to where you as a separate individual of me, these are my expectations of you or what I can hold you accountable for?
Wow. I don't even think I have an answer for that. That's hard. That's one thing that I struggled a lot with in college, and I don't know that I ever figured it out.
Hey, I haven't either. That's why I'm trying to ask you. So we in the same boat.
We need to phone a friend into this.
I think the only I think the only conclusion I kind of came to, which gave me some level of peace with it, is kind of knowing what that person is capable of doing.
Hmm.
So I reset my standards and expectations of you from what you've done in the past. So if I've seen you're capable of doing this thing, I expect that of you now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's with me, with your mom, your cousin. You're able to do this thing. So you've shown that this is capable of being done.
Mm-hmm.
So now I expect this to be not necessarily your new norm, but I expect more of it. But my issue still comes when not in a comparison game, but like you're at a 6 with it and I'm expecting a 10. That's where my issue still is there. So I know I'm in a step in the right direction, but I haven't figured out all the way yet how to get there.
Yeah. And it's also like you don't know what that person's, if they're expecting an 8 from themselves or if they're expecting a 4. It's hard to hold people accountable when you don't even know what they expect of themselves.
I think about a lot when we hear how teams are in their dynamic of this is the standard of excellence we expect from our players to be on our team. Mm-hmm. So somebody like South Carolina is a really good example. We all have 5-star athletes here. So we're not missing any level of talent. It's 5-star, 4.5-star, 4-star. Like we have the most talented girls in the nation as a group. But you have to leave your ego behind. You have to leave this mindset of I'm the star, I'm this player here behind because that's not true here. This is the level of work we put in. This is the level of input that we have. This is the mindset we carry with us. This is our culture that we have. So it's tough I haven't figured out how coaches are able to establish that identity and keep these players accountable at this level because this is the expectation we're going to hold you guys to. So me as Dawn can't come in and say, hey, we're going to do this level of A, B, and C, and then expect everybody up there off top. But she's done that. So that's where I'm like, that's one of the biggest things I have been able to understand of coaching. Like, how in the world are you able to create this culture, hold everybody to this standard, and keep them accountable to be the champion like she was? Like, that's one of the mysteries of the world that I haven't understand yet.
Yeah. And the way that she gets them all to buy into that. I mean, you look at Full Wiley was coming off the bench, and it's like, how? She would be starting literally anywhere else in the country, but she bought into that role. And it's almost like they have this belief at South Carolina that, okay, they might have the most talent, but they don't hang their hat on talent. They hang it on the way that they work, and it's incredible.
Yeah, so that's one of the most admirable things I saw from last season of how like you couldn't point to one girl being her. Like she's the main person. We have to attack her. We have to stop her. Like before it was Aaliyah. Like you stop Aaliyah Boston, you have a good chance of beating South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, it's not easy to stop Aaliyah, so let's slow down on that part. But you know, that's the head of the snake. You cut it off, you have a good chance to beat South Carolina. Who's the head of the snake there? It's Dawn. So you can't stop the coach. You can't out coach her. That's not what you're gonna do. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do you beat South Carolina? They weren't able to figure it out last year. So
Will
it's
anyone
tough.
figure it out? I don't know.
We will see. But this has been fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
And I had more tweets that I wanted to kind of get into, but we're not gonna make it a 2-hour episode. You know, I know you have more writing to do.
Yes.
You have an artist like to. Remember I said earlier we have boundaries. So you know, we're clocking in with the podcast. We're gonna clock out now with the podcast, and you're gonna live your life as one of the greatest sports performance, sports psychology writers of our time. You know, and get up out of here.
Yeah, you're a true pro.
Oh man, you know, coming for you, that means a lot. So I really appreciate that. So where can people find the book? Tell them more about you. Where can they find you at and everything?
So Becoming a Pro is out now on Amazon. The website where you can order merch, get in contact with me, read the blog is ballispsych.com. You can get in contact with me on social media. My username is at Julie, the number 4, NIER, and at ballispsych.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have you're probably the first artist. I mean, the artist, probably the first author I've had on here.
Oh, nice.
I think so.
What an honor.
Yeah, like I've had people who've written books, but they're not like an author.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like the first author. Like people play basketball, but you're not a basketball player. It's two different things. So yeah, you've written a book, but she's like an actual author. Like she does this.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like the first author I've had on here. I just thought about it. That's cool.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you.
No, thanks for having me. This was so much fun.
No, I really appreciate it. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you and get the book, I'll have the link below. This has been really fun. We have to get the other tweets in some other time. But really appreciate you coming on. Any last words you want to leave the people with before we get out of here?
Well, I just want to thank you for doing this podcast. I mean, yeah, I started listening after the Amari Robinson episode, and you just add so much value. So I'm grateful for your generosity in that way.
Uh-oh. Oh, you froze for a minute.
So, did I cut out?
Yeah. Like after I said it, you said and then you got nothing.
Okay. I just want to say thank you to you for this podcast. I mean, you just add so much value. And I know you put a lot of time and effort into it, and that's why it's such a great podcast. So thanks for your generosity in that way, and keep killing it.
No, I appreciate that, you know. But it's people like you who make it great. So I'm pretty cool, but I get the people on here who are like cooler than me. So that makes it really fun to do. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're so humble.
It means a lot. And it's been cool to talk to you. Hey man, you know, just doing something with my life. That's all it is, man. No, that's it. Thank you again for coming on. The Arthur. That's kind of cool that you're Arthur. Like I think I want to talk to you about that when we get off here. I got thoughts about that, but that's cool. But thank you for coming on. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.